See you. Well, hello. We're officially live. It is Sunday, April the 11th, and this is the Real Talk Show, Season 2, Episode 12. I can't believe it. And so, for those of the folks that are actually just joining over from Instagram, I want to say to you, welcome. For those of you who are joining from our private Facebook community, Women Activating Greatness and Purpose, welcome. For those of you joining from the YouTube channel, welcome. We are so happy to have you here with us. Yes, I see you all joining in. Thank you. Welcome. And so this evening is just quite the honor. So before I even talk about this amazing guest who has wondered why she would even commit, it's now 2 a.m. for her, correct?
Yes, it is.
But let's get a chance to really share with everybody why they're a part of Real Talk this evening. So Real Talk, as a lot of you may know, Real Talk is truly a heart and a passion project of mine. I truly believe that I needed to have created a space where we could encourage one another, engage one another, empower one another, and most importantly, educate one another, all with a mission for me to help to be this guide for us to ensure that we live our lives on purpose and activate this incredible greatness that's within us, live a life that truly has passion and prosperity. So what do you do when you actually want to have a life of purpose, passion, and prosperity? You pursue the individuals who you believe can help to magnify the greatness that we have within us, because they themselves are walking along this path. And I believe that all of us have this path of discovery, right? This path of discovery, there is nothing, we don't believe in perfection. We believe that purpose evolves. And if anybody can speak about evolving and moving, 2 a.m., what a commitment, right? Yes. I will have you know that it was disclaimed. I have no idea why I committed to do this at 2 a.m. other than love, family love. And so let me tell you a little bit about our amazing guest, who I have complimented her on her head wrap and how queenly she appears. I really do love this lady. And you'll find out that, yes, Donaldson, which means that, yes, we are related. Greatness is in our DNA. But let me tell you a little bit about Donna Lee Donaldson. So she's joining us from Kenya. And Donna Lee for me, is one incredible purpose-filled woman who is a ball of fire. That's how I would best describe her. An energy bunny that keeps going and going. And really, I don't believe that in her mind there are any limits to what she's capable of doing, which is why I found it necessary to have her as a guest on our show. So Donna Lee is an education policy and product strategist, leading teams that partner with government actors to build innovative educational tech products that serve hundreds of thousands of youths and teachers across East Africa. She's also a career coach to women seeking high-impact international careers in Africa. Donna Lee is regularly invited as a speaker on both international development and career growth issues. While her work has spanned 10 countries in Africa, Donna Lee is proudly Jamaican and is the head of policy and advocacy for the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council. Prior to her current career, she was a defense attorney for the city of New York. What she does not have here is that she absolutely loves Jamaica. If she could live on the beach, she would. She enjoys good food. And yes, she is truly a great ball of fire. Thank you. Yes, Cheryl, fire and energy truly does run in the DNA. So without any further ado, thank you so much for waking up at 2 a.m. to pour into us today so that we can hear from you. I mean, I am still stuck at how many countries that you have been engaged with. But I want to hear a little bit more about you because, in my mind, I've always considered you a little prodigy, but you've always had that humble spirit. And so, just give us a little background of who Donna Lee is beyond this bio. Like, at what
Mhm.
in your life did you know you would kind of navigate in the directions that you have? Talk to us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so funny with you asking me these questions. I'm like, you could just tell my story, Marsha-Ann.
I don't know enough.
You don't really know. So I don't know if there was really a time when I knew what was coming. I'm a planner, so I always have my 1 year plan and my 5 year plan. I check in on my progress quarterly and that kind of thing. But much of my life was about being open to possibilities that I didn't really know existed, right? So when I was in Mobile, going to Mobile High, I didn't know that I was going to even live abroad, right? That was not a mindset for me. But what I will say has made a difference is trying to do the best with whatever was in front of me at the time. Because if you're able to excel in the space that you're in, that allows you to be top of mind when there are new opportunities that are coming up. And so I think there was always a spirit of excellence that was instilled, and I think that is the thing that has really propelled me. And part of that was me being a competitive person, which to some extent I still am. But also coming from a background with a mother as an educator, and I guess most of your audience is probably of Jamaican heritage, so you guys know how Jamaican parents are, right? Like if you go home with 100%, they're going to ask you, "Where's the remaining 3?" And it is worse when your parent is actually a teacher, because then they know the full scope of what is possible, right?
Right.
I have many hilarious memories of my mother's interactions with my teachers, because it was like, where's the other percent? What is she doing? Why she never get the other percent, right? And so I was very locked in early on to academic excellence and the importance of that. But then that continued to lead to other opportunities, and also being very involved in extracurriculars. Those things continue to open new pathways up to me. So I feel like I also, we're talking about being multi-passionate, right? So I definitely have shiny object syndrome. So I would see something new, I'm like, oh, I want to try this thing, right?
Right.
Um, and so having that kind of approach can be dangerous, but it also allows us to just experience new things that we would not have seen otherwise.
Right. So, at what point, when you left high school, you were always an avid reader
Mm-hmm. Still am.
and an avid talker.
Yes.
So, was law a natural progression for you? Tell us how you progressed. Tell us how you progressed and ended up choosing law.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know why people say that if you can talk, you'll be a good lawyer. Most lawyers never go into a courtroom. I do not understand why people think so. Well, I kind of understand. TV is a terrible representation of what being a lawyer is like, right? And I say this as somebody who actually was a litigator and spent a lot of time in the courtroom. Most
Okay.
lawyers do not. But no, it wasn't the plan. So I was a science student, which we know in the Jamaican context, if you're smart, they push you into sciences, right? My
Mhm.
mother is also a chemistry teacher, so I didn't really think much. I didn't think twice about it. Like I even went to undergrad as a chemistry honors student.
Oh, wow.
In my first year of university, I was doing chemistry research, like with PhD researchers, with professors, etc. So I was very much on that track, and I thought I was going to med school and all of that. But as anybody can sense by watching me at 2 a.m., I'm a very dynamic person. Like I'm very energetic. I like talking to people. I value human interaction and all of that. And I just remember getting to my junior year of college, and I looked at my pending schedule, because I had stacked so many courses that I could have actually graduated early. But when I looked at the schedule it would have taken me to graduate early, it was just going to be me in the lab. like every day, because all I had left was research, right? I had done so much of the theoretical component that what I really needed to do if I was going to finish early, which I don't know why I wanted to finish early. That's a separate conversation. But I would have basically ended up 4 to 5 days a week spending every single afternoon in the lab. And for a science student, right, that is exciting. That's what science students want to do. They want to be in the lab all day. They relish the thought of working on research and, poking around with their amoeba in the little petri dish every day or whatever it is. I did not. And I just remember having this moment of, all that's left is this, like the theory is done. All you need to do is the practical stuff and you don't like it. So what is the point of, continuing down this trajectory of science when you don't actually like the hard work of science, right? Or the practical piece of it that you need to do. And so I started drifting more to the policy part of it, of health. Right, because the goal was like, how do we make society better through medicine? Right, that's because we don't. Again, it goes back to what are you exposed to versus what are you open to, right? I didn't know what the job options were. Like, we never had career fairs, right? It's like, what are you going to do when you're graduating from high school in Jamaica? You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Mm-hmm. An accountant and nurse. Like, I didn't know what the options were. I didn't grow up with cable, right? We didn't have 24/7 internet and all these things, YouTube, where you can go and see all these different career options. So I didn't know what was available. But because at this point I was in the US because I had gotten a scholarship to do my undergrad there, and I started being exposed to other things because now I'm at a school that has a career center and has career fairs and you can read different books about different options. And so I started getting into the policy space, and public health policy is this huge thing, right? So I decided, no, I'm going to run the World Health Organization. This is literally what my plan is at this point. So actually, I guess the international piece, that's when that set in, because me being, I told you I'm a competitive person, right? If I'm going to do public health policy, I'm going to do it the best way, right? Which is to work for a health organization. And so I started mapping out what are the potential careers. And there, I found that there was a path that involved going to law school and becoming a legal and policy specialist to really impact public health globally. Oh, that's how the law school thing came in. And then I started researching how does one get to law school? Oh, you have to take a test. Great. I'm great at tests. I can do this, right? And so then I just started studying for the LSAT. So I did all this research and it's how do you pass this test? Because the other thing too, right, is I can only go to school if I'm getting a scholarship, right? This is a standard that my mother has set. So at this point, I've been on scholarship since from high school, right? Straight through Mobile High, undergrad, full ride.
You started high school at what age again?
9? 10, 9?
9.
It was somewhere around there. That there's also a funny story there that involves my mother having to go and convince the Ministry of Education to let me take GSAT. I was in that first GSAT cohort and I was too young. That's a whole other story. It's a whole other story. But yes, I was very young throughout my schooling, which again I guess thanks to my mother. I don't know what exactly she did, but I skipped a lot of grades in my early years. But to answer your question about the law school thing, that's the path, right? Is wanting to serve people through medicine, because that's the only thing I knew as being a service-oriented career where you could make money. That's the definition of success, right? In my young Jamaican Donna Lee brain. But then I discovered I didn't want to do the practical part of it. The work it took to get there was not enjoyable to me, but I loved policy work. I was able to find internships in health policy as well in New York, because I was going to school in New Jersey, and so you could do your summer internships in New York. And so I was just learning a lot through that process. And I thought, oh, this is something I can really do. I remember I was interning for the City of New York's health department while I was in undergrad. And this is the year when, I want to say this is Bloomberg, who had instituted that law where you couldn't smoke anymore. I don't know if people remember when that was now it's so normal to go out and not see people smoking. Right. But at that time it was a huge controversy. And so being there that summer, I remember we actually used to go out to restaurants and track who was in compliance with the law. We used to look at things related to immigrants' health and how, because of lots of anti-immigration policies, even at that time, immigrants' health is much worse. Like when immigrants move to the US, their health declines significantly. Cancer rates go up, heart disease rates go up, stress, everything, every indicator of health basically.
Because of access to health and stress, I imagine.
Yeah, the stressors as well as they don't engage with the healthcare system for a lot of reasons related to stigma and also language barriers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I could talk about that forever, but I guess my point is that I had these opportunities to see where policy makes a huge impact on health. Like it's not it's not just a doctor that can make your life better through medicine, right? Yeah, and so I was like figuring out how do I do this, and I started doing a lot of research. I was on so many pre-law forums, and I was figuring out that the key thing, apart from like your experience and your GPA, is you have to pass this exam called the LSAT.
Right.
It's a standardized test, and I'm good at standardized tests. And at this point, my mother has set the expectation that I have to get a second degree. Also, I have to pay for it, right? Because she always said, "Yeah, you're going to do these degrees, but you have to get a full ride. That's the only way, right?" And so I had that mindset: if I don't find a way to get a full ride to a great school, I won't be going. And so then that became the mission. So then I created my own system and I took my LSAT. I did pretty well, and I was able to get into top 20 law school, which is Emory Law.
Wow.
With a full ride. So shout out to Emory. Thank you very much for paying for my legal degree.
Wow. That's big. So help us to then further unpack. If you have, there's one question that has come up here, and it's, how do you believe that some of your extracurricular activities contributed to your path? Because competitiveness is definitely a big part of your push of being successful. And we can define what success means to you, because that varies to everyone, right?
Right.
But how do you believe a lot of that extracurricular, which is not limited to what you'd have done in primary school, prep school, high school, I'm sure you carried that along with you as well. So
absolutely.
Tell us.
I actually think that one of the most beneficial things I've done in terms of education is that I was always involved in the performing arts. And I really stress to my friends who are raising children now, let your child do something that is creative and something that requires them to speak and to interact with people and to face embarrassment, right? So as somebody that grew up doing speech and drama and quiz and music and dance, everything, I am so comfortable with any scenario you put me into because I've been through all the crazy stuff, right? I have done poems and forgotten my lines on stage. I have forgotten my dance move in the middle of a team activity, but I've also excelled, right? And won so many medals and made so many memories and learned how to work with a team as well as solo. And so those things for me were, I think, really critical in developing confidence and comfort to be able to navigate into different spaces. So the ease that I have with communication now, which is such a critical skill in any job that you're going to do, comes from growing up doing performing arts. And I find that as somebody like working as a career coach now and like counseling people into how to grow their career, especially women, especially Black women, we do not know how to articulate our worth in the workplace. We don't know how to stand in front of a stranger and succinctly communicate our value. We shy back from that. We're too humble, in my opinion. And too many of us are so nervous when we have to speak to strangers. But the people that are winning in the workplace and winning in society is not necessarily the best person, right? Very often it's the person that can fearlessly speak up and say, I'm over here, I can do this thing, right? Here is how I do it. Let me show you what I can do. And so I credit a lot of my success actually not to like content knowledge, because content, we forget so much that we learned anyway, right? Who remembers what you studied for CXC 30 years ago? Nobody, really.
Right.
But the interpersonal skills, the collaborative skills, the ability to speak, to communicate, to work with others, those are the things that I think are really, really important. And then, beyond that, thinking of into university years, extracurriculars do play a part in terms of if you don't have them, it looks weird. I will say that, right? So if you're competing for or applying for jobs or competitive fellowships, etc., you don't want to be the one person that has no clubs on their resume, right? So you should find some activities you're involved in. If there are no organizations that interest you, start something, right? And that something can be your own organization. It can be, your own blog or newsletter or vlog or whatever it is in an area that you're interested in. Go on and write for a newspaper, go and learn to be a radio DJ or something, whatever is on your campus, right? Find a way to plug into that, because that helps you to show leadership ability. It also really helps with networking, by the way. And we could talk about that because that's a whole other topic. But it is to our detriment to just focus on grades. And I think that is something that was an important shift for me to make mentally, because nobody taught me that, right? And again, coming from that kind of strict academic background, we talk about grades, grades, grades. But when you get out into the real world, and I'm sure you can talk about this because you're a very seasoned executive in your field, right? It's about who knows you. At a certain point, nobody cares about a resume. Like, you have to have one, you have to have your transcript for like compliance purposes. But who are people hiring? It's the people that talk to them. It's the people that they know, who they can remember. And then this is where being multi-passionate comes in. And that's why it can be a tricky space to navigate for career building, is because people need to remember what you can do so they can bring you into conversation, so they can recommend you for roles, so they can push you into opportunities, right? And so you have to be able to articulate what you are best for and great at, even when you are a multi-passionate person.
Wow. That's quite a lot to chew on. So and that was some very good information that just kind of flowed straight through you. So if you were going to be saying, if you were coaching, you have a lot of career folks on here now, also multi-passionate individuals. And you said something a while ago, which is very, very, very important for us to break down even greater. Is that sometimes you might know what you are amazing at. But if you don't demonstrate or articulate it, then you will not necessarily be drawn into the space where the conversations are being held.
Absolutely.
Elaborate on that. Talk to us about that a little bit more.
Sure. So, we know in Jamaica we talk about links, right? So people get jobs through links. That is true the world over, right? And people call it different things in different places. But the idea is that most opportunities in the world are coming because somebody knows you and they have a reason to vouch for you. And that can be because you're their friend, but also people generally want to recommend somebody that they trust will do well, right? Because it makes them look good as well. So even when we're talking about links, I don't want to use my links to get Marsha-Ann a job if Marsha-Ann is going to fail, because now I am going to look crazy, right? So the way for me to pick you to push into a space over the other 3 people that are my friends as well is because I know that you're going to excel at this thing. And I would add that actually the only way to overcome these biases is to be even better than all the people that have the links, right? And to be known, right? To have your brand in that space, because that is what allows you to stand out. But then we also know that so many opportunities in the world are not advertised, right? People seek you out because they know you're good at something, right? So imagine now somebody wants to host they're looking for a radio show host. They could go pay to put something in the newspaper to say, we're looking for a host and here are the requirements. Or they can stop and think, who do I know who's hosting a show right now that has a community of 1,000 people or 10,000 people listening to them on a weekly basis, right? So the point I'm making here is you're in that position because you're already doing something, right? And so that is, for me, is a key part of that positioning is not just about being able to say what you can do, but it's also doing things, right? Show your work. I say this to people all the time. How are you showing your work? If I Googled right now, radio host or podcast host or whatever host, Jamaica, if that's what you want to do, I need to find your name on Google, right? So you need to be doing things that show your work, that show me what your passions and your skills are. So when we talk about being multi-passionate, one of the things that I know us multi-passionate people struggle with is we talk about how we like 10 things and we can do 10 things, but we're not showing it in any way, and we're not speaking up about it effectively. So now we start getting frustrated, like, why am I not getting these opportunities? And a big part of it is because nobody really knows that you want those opportunities. You have not demonstrated that you are excellent in these areas, right? And so it's really important to start showing your work to people, not just talking about it, but showing your work. Also remembering that we are now in this information economy, right? COVID has made this even worse. I'm sure for people listening, your screen time must have gone up during COVID. Right. We're on the phone all the time. We're on so many Zooms, so many Twitter pages, so many Instagram pages, all these lives. I'm so tired of lives, right? We are Zoomed out. We are WhatsApped out. There's just too much coming at us. So in this situation where there's so much information coming at people, everybody's a brand, right? How do you stand out? How do people remember you in this sea of information if you don't consistently, keyword, consistently show your work, consistently communicate that this is what you are about, right? Because remember, whatever you're about, there are probably 100 other content creators and well-branded people who are also about that same thing with their own spin on it, right? So if you don't consistently communicate, people don't know that this is what you care about and that you're good at it.
Wow, so true. This is being echoed here. I can't even say what this percentage is, but that is percentage to infinity. In other words, what you're saying is pure gold. So when you're doing your career coaching then, and when you're talking about, it comes back to confidence, right? It comes back to commitment, and it comes back to consistency. 3 very, very important words that I am identifying as such pillars of strength, especially for women to stand up and own their space. If you are going to say to us that in your career coaching, those who are coming out on top, if you are identifying, what are folks looking for in that 1 percentile? Like, what are the 3 core qualities that you're finding are so vital to standing out? What do you see?
That's such a great question. So 3 things that are really vital to standing out. I think one thing is having like a clear concept of like clear identity, clear professional identity that they want to communicate. And again, that can be difficult when you're multi-passionate, but you do have to do the work, right? You have to do the work to decide, how am I going to show up in the world? Who do I want to be remembered as? When people think of me, what are the 2 things, right? For multi-passionate people, we always have more than one thing, right? So what are the 2 things we want them to remember about us, right? We need to be clear on that, because that brings us to the next point, is that people who are doing really well are the people that consistently communicate about those 2 things. And they're able to say yes. They intentionally say yes to things that amplify those skills, and they say no to things that do not. Right? So being able to really make a choice, I say, okay, this is what I'm focused on right in this moment, and I'm going to keep communicating about that. I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm going to say no to things that detract from this space that I'm in. And then the third thing I would say is that the people who are doing really well are the people that are willing to network, right? So like I was talking to someone, a client yesterday actually, and she was telling me about this job that she wants, and she applied for the job and she's not getting the job. And I said, who did you talk to before you applied? And she said, nobody. I said, you sent your application to a company where no one knew you were sending an application. Why did you think you were going to get the job? Why? in the world that we're living in now, there's absolutely no reason for you to be applying to anything where somebody on the other end does not know who you are. There should be no cold applications. None. Right. And so one of the things that I work with people on is, who are you going to identify in an organization that you're going to do your informational interview with, so that you understand the problem that the company is trying to solve. Because every hire is a problem to be solved, right? That's why they created the role.
Right.
There's a problem they have, and your role is supposed to solve that problem. How can you effectively solve a problem if you don't have a clear articulation of what the problem is? Mm-hmm. You're not going to get it from a job description on a website.
Right.
You get that by talking to people that work there, to people who can tell you who is the hiring manager, and actually what is the thing that they've been complaining about, so that when you're positioning yourself, your entire application speaks to that issue. And also now there's somebody in the organization, whether it's the hiring manager, who can sometimes be hard to get to for a bigger organization, or maybe somebody lower who can say to whomever is screening, look out for my friend's resume, move it to the top of the pile because they can solve this problem, right? And all these things tie together, right? Because the only reason people are going to be willing to do that kind of thing for you is if you can articulate that you're the best, right? Or there's a good chance you're the best, right? Because think about it, when a company is hiring, the longer the role is open, the more money costs them, right? Like, companies actually calculate the rate of how long. There's a term for it that's eluding me right now, but they calculate how many days did this role stay open for, and they put a dollar amount to that. So the recruiters or HR coordinators, whatever they're called in the company, are very incentivized to close a role quickly, right? The quicker they close a role, the better they are appraised in their job, right? That's a success metric for them. The hiring manager that wants to hire a person also wants to close this role quickly, because the problem is there to be solved, and they want to solve the problem now, right? So people are absolutely incentivized to push you to the pack if you are the best. The issue is, can you communicate that you're the best, right? And so it takes more than just sending an application, right? It goes back to the three things I just mentioned, which are both being clear on who you are, so that some things you don't even apply for because they don't relate to your professional identity, right? Secondly, communicating that identity and showing work around that identity, so that by the time you're applying, it's like you've done all these things already, or you are able to narrate a story that weaves together clearly why you have these skills. And then third, you have an insider advocating for you, because you're going the extra step of leveraging your network, or if you don't have a network, they're creating it before you put that thing in, so that somebody on the inside is saying, oh yeah, let's bring her to the top because there's a good chance she can solve this problem for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, makes so much sense though. So the flip side to that is, what are you identifying that a lot of the companies are saying? Is there, so because the incentive is close that gap real quickly, right? But the companies are saying there's talent out there. Everybody knows that there's talent. Folks are not necessarily articulating it very well. But in today's day and age, what do you believe a lot of the companies are looking for when you're talking about, I think your thing is that you're placing high achieving women, for example. What are companies looking for? Because no longer is it that they're just looking for that you have a master's degree. There's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Right? So what are you identifying that companies are looking for? And what are some of the tips that you would give to everyone on here that are saying, even if you're in your company now, how are you bolstering yourself? What are companies really looking for? What are you finding?
Skills. And it sounds really simple, and it's hard for me to even say something as simple as that. But honestly, I find that people often talk about they have experience, and when I look at the resume, I'm like, okay, what is the experience, right? Experience is not 5 years. It's not time, right? Experience is, what did you achieve, right? You helped your current company accomplish what measurable goal? and how did you do that, right? So if we're looking at the resume of a high achiever, I should be seeing things like how much money did you save your company in dollar amounts, right? What deal did you negotiate? What partnership did you create? Or whatever it is for your sector, you need to be able to show quantifiable success, right? Not just to say things like, you reviewed something or you taught something. Well, what was the success that was created by your action? Mm-hmm. That's really important. A lot of people are not able to present what they did in a quantifiable way. And so from the side of the person looking to hire you, they're not clear what you will bring to the table. They're not clear how you can solve their problem. And so I think that's one of the main things, that people are not able to quantify their success. And a part of why we don't do that is we sometimes get so bogged down in the job, we're not stepping back to actually document our accomplishments. And that's something that's really important, that whatever role that you are in, even if you don't want to leave the job anytime soon, but you should be regularly sitting down and writing down, like keep a resume file where you actually capture your accomplishments. Something that I've been doing from very early in my career, which one of my mentors taught me, was anytime people praise you for something, especially if it's in writing, you should have a folder in your email that you save all of your praise in. And so when it's time for you to be updating your resume to show what did you do well, go back to that folder and add those things in as your wins that you have secured for the company. And in fact, when you're trying to get raises or you're trying to negotiate promotions for your company, you bring that file back. When you're about to do your review, go back to that folder, because you should be writing those things down, and you can go back to your boss and say, yeah, well, in March you said, and in April you said, and you're not going to say it in that way, sure, right? But you're going to have this documentation where we can both see that you commented that I saved you this money or I achieved this thing. And so we're all on the same page about the value that I bring to this organization. Mm-hmm. So I find that sometimes we don't do a good enough job of that documentation, and both internally in terms of internal advancement or even for external advancement. Even if you are an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. Are you collecting reviews, right? Is it easy for me to figure out what are you great at? What do your former clients say about you? All of those things tie into the way that you show your work to people. Right.
Brilliant. So because you're multi-passionate, tell us about folks who are on here listening, mm-hmm. and a big part of your move and your success is really just about ensuring that you're not locked into one location, right? Mm-hmm. Is it that you choose to go where the opportunities are? Is it that, tell us about that aspect. Tell us about that fearless spirit, and how does being fearless apply to you thriving?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm fearless. I am not fearless. I'm open. I'm very open-minded. I think almost any mistake can be corrected, almost, right? And so I often think about things in terms of, let me try this for a year. That's more of my mindset, right? I think sometimes people overthink, and I'm an overthinker, so I get it. But when it comes down to professional moves, I say to myself, well, can I do this thing for a year? Okay, I can do it for a year. What's the worst case scenario? If after a year this goes badly, will my life have been ruined? No. I'm fairly well educated. I'm fairly smart. I'm going to be able to rebound, right? If this all comes crashing down. That's what I tell myself. Right. Sometimes I tell myself repeatedly, so it really soaks in. And then the longer you work, I think the more confident you can get that you can take certain kinds of risks professionally. And so for me, shifting from law to education was it. It was, okay, let's try something different. And I wasn't even planning to do education, actually. I was moving back to Jamaica. That was really my goal. When I left New York, like a year after law school, I'd been working for a year. And I was like, why am I still in America? This place is crazy. So I was moving back to Jamaica with no real sense of what I was doing, which is the worst thing you can tell Jamaican people, right? Like nobody understands why are you moving in this direction with no wealth to speak of.
Mhm.
Um, and so actually what happened is I got so much negative feedback from every single Jamaican person, which was my community, right? Like I was trying to come home and everybody was like, no, why are you doing that? There's nothing in Jamaica for you. You're in the US, stay there. And just the US immigrant path was just not appealing to me, right? The standard path of you go to the US and you get your H-1B and then which is like the work visa, then you get the green card. Citizenship, whatever, you work until you're 60, you buy a house in Jamaica, when you retire, you come back to live in the house. I was like, this is not the dream for me.
Right.
No respect to other people who are doing that. That's not my dream.
Mhm.
So, in the midst of all of that dissuasion from, is that a word? To dissuade, yes. In the midst of all of that, I had a good friend from undergrad who is Ghanaian. And she just was on this back to Africa Marcus Garvey type mission. She was on those campaigners that all the blacks must come back to the continent and build the continent, which is an oversimplification of the journey. But she was the one that put that bug in my ear. And I said, okay, I've never thought of this before. At this point, like, I don't know. I mean, I'd taken African politics classes and I, read a lot of African literature. I took African lit and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't think of living here, right? But she put that bug in my ear, and she even said to me, because her family has a home in Accra, and she said, just come to Accra. There's a house, like you won't be homeless and you can figure it out when you get there. No, I told you I'm not fearless, right? I'm a don't like, bro. So I said, no, thank you, but no, thank you. I will come if I find work.
Right.
And so the internet is a beautiful thing, right? As much as I talk about international careers, I stress to people that you can be international from wherever you are in the world, and there's so much information at our fingertips now, right? So even more than there was 8 years ago when I was making this move. And so LinkedIn is my best friend, and I happened to find this job to come and start a university in Rwanda. And I thought to myself, when would I ever get a chance to start a university anywhere? I can do this for a year. So I came to Rwanda with my 2 suitcases, not thinking I was going to be here for long, right? 2 suitcases. I didn't even max out on what I could have brought. And I was just open, and that just turned into where I am now, which is it's always been building on, what's the next step that I'm interested in. So a lot of times we can't see what the full path is, but we can take one more step that is interesting to us, right? And so that's for me the same thing. I'm saying, can I do this thing for 1 year? Is it interesting enough for me to commit a year of my life to it? And I just keep going in that way.
Wow. So you started that university, and where else have you lived?
So lived in Rwanda and now live in Kenya, but have worked in a lot of different places. So by virtue of like my little side things that I do, and because the organization I work for is in multiple countries, I've also done work in Uganda, because I do speaking work. So I've done, speaking engagements in Nigeria, in the Ivory Coast, through like the personal branding, right? People get to know who you are, so they invite you into projects. So I've done education projects in Tanzania. I've done education projects with UNESCO in South Africa. So people just, over time, you kind of build your brand as an expert in your field, and people start bringing you or inviting you into different things.
Wow. So why then the career coaching side of things? What is it that you saw as a need that had you believe this is something I need to help others with?
The demand for it, right? People kept asking me for advice. And so to backtrack a little, when I was in university, my job, like my part-time job, was I worked in our university's writing center. So from a very long time ago, I have been helping people with, resume reviews, writing cover letters, and, general writing. And I was trained to do that. One of my degrees is in English. And then when you're a lawyer, people assume that you can write well because that's a part of the job, right? And I'm also, at a director level in my field and in my organization. So I'm also a hiring manager. So I get a lot of requests from people asking about, how can they advance in their career. And then additionally, because I was, I helped start this university, I also taught for a while. And so I have a lot of insight into the labor market in this region. Because my job is in like the youth skills, like skills and employment space. Right.
Okay.
So a lot of what I'm doing is basically trying to make education better so that people can have the skills they need to succeed post graduation. And so the combination of those things has given me a really specific kind of insight into what does it mean to succeed professionally. And then because I was also doing a lot of speaking, that kind of just happened as well. Like I didn't plan that. Literally one day, one of my friends was starting a business that required her to do an award show, and she couldn't afford to pay like a real speaker. And she was like, "Can you host this thing for me?" And I just kept getting gigs to host after that. So that was also another way where people would start bringing me in to start doing coaching for their staff on like how to be more confident, how to articulate more, how to communicate better in the workplace and all of that. So all of that tied into, honestly, I just got to the point where I was getting too many requests. And so I started charging for it because I needed a way to filter people out. Because now it's like I cannot do this much or deal with this many people for free. So I can, create some core free resources. But then for the depth that people want me to go with them, let us actually carve out a time and let's put, an agreement on this that holds both of us accountable to a certain level of excellence so that you actually get to what you want. And so that's how that has evolved.
Wow. But you've brought up a very important point then, which each listener should be able to identify with. You're saying that folks kept on coming to you because you were known for this or you were great at it. And then you have identified that it is something that is so natural for you to do that you began to say, hold on, this is something that I can no longer just randomly just keep doing. Let me fix a figure to that. Right. So you would then be coaching us to say, identify what it is that you do so very well, because a part of what multi-passionate folks do is that they underestimate these other things that they do because it comes so easy and it comes so natural.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. That is such a great point, Marsha. And I deal with this so much with people. I was talking to somebody the other day, like helping her with her job search. And this is somebody who, because I know her personally, I know that she's multilingual, right? She speaks 3 languages. She speaks at professional level. She speaks more languages, but 3 at professional level. English, French, and Kiswahili, right? Which basically means if you understand the language diversity of the continent, she can work in West, East, and Southern Africa based on those 3, right? It's very hard to find somebody that is competent enough in a diversity of languages where they can be in multiple regions. Usually people are good in a region, right? And she was talking about how hard it is for her to find these jobs. And I said to her, okay, I'm looking at your LinkedIn. I only see you writing English. And she said, yeah. I said, do you realize that the skill set you have where you could literally manage people in 3 different languages is something that most people don't have? Wow. And she just had this aha moment, right? But it's because, of course, she doesn't teach that skill. She's been multilingual her whole life, right? So for her, why would she, articulate it? Whereas for me, as somebody that really struggles with language, I am so envious of all the multilingual people. I'm like, oh my God, teach me your ways, right? And so I started saying to her, like, no, you need to be posting in different languages so that people start to brand you mentally as, a person that is actually able to communicate technical concepts in these languages, so we know that we can bring her into certain kinds of roles, right? So I offer that as an example to say, absolutely, the things that we are good at, they're so natural to us, we underestimate the value of them. But again, this is why it's so important to show your work. Because when you're showing your work, meaning whatever you love to do, document it, vlog about it, write about it, tweet about it, etc., people will start to highlight those things for you, right? And then it gives you more of a sense of what are your options. So I can share with you that I used to vlog quite a bit. I've pulled down some of the videos, but a lot of people had found me at one point because they wanted to move to Rwanda. And I used to have videos up about that kind of thing. And people kept on asking me for advice, like, how do I move? How do I move? How do I move? How do I move? And I realized at one point, oh, this is a whole thing. Like,
Yes,
I could
clearly.
be charging you to help you figure this out. And there are people that make money that way. They're relocation consultants and they do that. I have no desire to do it, so I don't. But the point I'm making is I would never have known that's a job if I had not been putting myself out there, because that's not something anybody tells you is a job that exists, right? It's like social media influencers. People make so much money off TikTok, but nobody is telling you when you grow up you can go on TikTok and make money, right? But it's because people just did something and the thing starts to catch that they realize, oh, this is something I can now monetize. And so that's why it's important when you're multi-passionate, do all the things. Don't feel guilty about having all those interests, but you will, at a certain point, you're going to start to figure out what is sticking, and then you can make some informed choices about which of those things now to really focus in on as your key two, because we don't want more than two.
Right.
Your key two things that you're going to focus on, right? And you do well in those lanes, and then you can pivot to something else and you can continue to kind of build out the brand.
Wow. My goodness. You have brought us on a platter so much information, right? And so I'm going to ask you some pointed questions only because you've stirred it in me. You've really stirred it. Tell me how you coach folks to tap into them understanding what their purpose is.
So I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about purpose. I don't think purpose is something that you tap into. I think purpose is something you create by doing, right? And so this idea of searching for a purpose, I personally do not agree with it. Mm-hmm. I don't coach anybody to go and search for a purpose. That eat, pray, love Hollywood thing is not my thing. What I tell people to do is to actually create, right? And commit to something, right? What is it that you can sit down and do every day for 3 months? Or maybe you can't think of that thing. Let's pick a thing together, right? And that's a part of the coaching discussion is what are you going to try to do every day for 3 months or every week for 3 months? You're going to write about this thing or read about this thing and do this thing and talk about what you're doing with this thing because you're always showing your work, right? That is where passion comes from. Passion comes from doing. I'm trying to remember who it was that said this really funny quote. There's this guy called Aliko Dangote, who I believe is the richest man in Africa, multi-billionaire guy. His money comes from, is it oil or telecoms? It's oil. It's oil. So there's a running joke on Twitter one day when somebody said, does anybody think Dangote is passionate about oil, right? No, he's not passionate about oil. He didn't wake up one day and said, well, oil is my passion, right? I'm going to go dig a well, right? He's passionate about that money that he's making, I'm sure. But there were consistent steps taken in that direction that allowed him to realize that this is where the wealth is going to be created. Elon Musk is one of the most popular entrepreneurs out there today. If we look at his career trajectory, 20 years ago when he was working on PayPal, he wasn't passionate about space or about whatever Tesla is doing with clean, cars or whatever, clean energy in cars. But he was taking incremental steps in the technology space, right? And so my point is, you don't have to have like this great one big passion. I certainly don't. I think what is important is to not get stuck. I think a lot of multi-passionate people, because we can't pick one thing, and because society tells us to pick one thing, we get so stressed out that we actually don't move at all. And so we'll find ourselves spinning and spinning and spinning. So we don't move, or we spin, right? Like we do one thing for a week, I do another thing for another week, another thing for another week, and 6 months have passed and we actually haven't moved forward. And so the goal that I'm trying to, help coaching clients to achieve is to move forward. Mm-hmm. Move forward, keep momentum, right? If you are moving forward by doing things and you're showing your work, I promise you opportunities will come to you and you will start to find passion in the work that you're doing, because passion comes from momentum, passion comes from recognition, validation from others and yourself, by completion, right? When you complete something, you feel good in yourself, right? And you start to think, let me take it a step further. Passion comes from expertise, right? When you realize, whoa, I am really one of the best at this thing. But you will never find a passion just by, in my opinion, sitting still.
Right.
And waiting for a voice from heaven. I mean, maybe that's a 1% thing. Maybe 1% of us will get it that way. For the 99%, I recommend keep moving forward. And so a big part of the coaching is for us to decide what will you choose to move forward with and how will you do that.
Wow. So I'm going to contest something with you though.
Okay.
Yeah. So we spoke about purpose and we spoke about passion.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I would then say to you is momentum is key. There's no question about that. But there are things that come so naturally to some people. So even Elon Musk, he may have just naturally been one of those that's always dabbling in different things. And so a big part of his quest was don't limit me, don't box me in. I'm always so naturally inclined to want to go wherever the quest of whatever is new is, right? So I believe there is this winning combination of taking what you love and building that momentum. But you raised a very good point. And that is, so what I'm contesting is momentum is one thing, but momentum, I believe the G-force is greater when you take what you've got, like a lot of things that excite you, right? A lot of the things that come so naturally to you that you just simply love to do. Then you add more momentum to that. I believe that becomes so much more fulfilling.
I mean, I get your point. I'm not saying you're wrong, but this is when I put my educator hat back on.
Tell me.
I don't know how much of what we think comes naturally really comes naturally versus was nurtured into us. And if we shift environments,
True.
we could find some other things that we didn't think were natural could actually be cultivated in us, right? So I'll use the example of myself as somebody who is paid to speak, right? People pay me to be a public speaker. As a teacher, I have to speak. As a manager, I speak. I train. As a lawyer, I was in the courtroom, I had to speak, right? I don't know how you would determine that it was a natural gift, or how would you determine if really it is because when I was 3 years old, somebody put me in a speech team.
Right.
And so I've had my 10,000 hours of speaking already, right? And so somebody who is starting today can build their 10,000 hours. That's a Malcolm Gladwell reference, by the way, for anybody who's wondering why I said 10,000 hours, which, is like a rough estimation of how to build expertise. You can get that today. And so it might not feel natural to you today, but if that is something that you're interested in, I would argue that you could get it, especially if you put yourself in an environment where everybody else was doing it. And that is something else that I think we miss a lot in our personal development and our growth journeys. We try to change things or acquire a new skill, and nobody else around us cares about that thing, and we lose steam very quickly, right? As opposed to when you are in a community, right? Like this is a big part of why church works, right? This is a big part of why masterminds work. It's because you are in a group of like-minded people who care about the same thing you care about. And so it starts to feel like I can do this because everybody else around me is doing this, right? And so I'm sure we all do have gifts, right? We all have talents that we're given. I don't want to take that away from people. But I don't want anybody to feel like because you are not gifted with something at birth that you cannot cultivate that thing and actually become very good at it. And I think where we both agree is that you should try to leverage the things you are good at, right? For sure. Especially if you're interested in those things. But I don't want people to feel as if if you don't already realize you're good at something that you, or if you haven't started to build that skill, that you cannot become good at that thing. And one of the reasons why I think that is so important from a career perspective as well is that the world is changing so rapidly. Jobs that are, premium jobs now simply did not exist 20 years ago. That's a real thing, right? There are jobs that are new now. Yeah. And so let us not cut ourselves off from the new opportunities that are going to arise as the world evolves. You can absolutely, at 70 years old, decide you're going to be a YouTuber. You
Right.
can.
True. Very true. Wow. Sheree's point, nature versus nurture. And I really value your perspective on that. I value your perspective on that a lot. If you were going to say, if you were the educator in you, if you were going to give us an assignment at the end of this to say, it's time for some introspection. It's time for you to write down questions for yourself. In other words, there's always more within us, right? There's always more to do to achieve, whether impact or leave legacy or to have more fulfillment versus just functioning. If you are going to give us 2 questions that we need to be asking ourselves and framing for us to have this meeting with self, tell us how you're going to wrap us up with that.
Sure. So one thing I would suggest is using the principle of backwards design, right? Look at where do you want to be even 1 year from now? What is something that you cannot do currently, or something that is not in your life currently, that you don't have currently? A year from now, you want it. And write that thing down and then work backwards. What would it take for you over the next 12 months to get to that thing, right? And break it down month by month by month, and just hold yourself accountable to every month checking out the things that you said it would take you to get to that space. Actually execute on those things. And I promise that if you do that, you will cultivate some kind of passion somewhere along the road. Some kind of purpose is going to come out of that process for you. And it might not be about the thing you want, right? So the practice here is not about achieving a goal. It's about momentum, maintaining momentum, because the journey is where the education comes in, right? I would say that's the thing that I would encourage people to do. Just pick a thing that you want to be different in your life 1 year from now, backwards map how you would get there, and then execute for a year, just a year of commitment.
A year.
And if that feels like too much, pick 6 months. If that feels like too much, 3 months. You can do a lot in your life in 3 months if you are committed and consistent with it.
Girl, this whole episode, I want you to know, for the record, it is now 3 a.m.
It's 3 a.m. I know, I'm awake. I'm ready to go.
It's 3 a.m. in Kenya.
Oh my God.
You have given us so much to think about. You have also unpacked a lot for us. And I believe that, and I certainly embrace the perspective and the perspectives that you have shared with us this evening. I know for sure this was truly a Real Talk episode. Facebook user says Real Talk. I'm not even seeing the name with this, but thank you for saying that. Yeah, this was Real Talk. And I have an obligation to just tell you that I'm so very proud of you. And
thank you.
You continue to shine your light wherever in the world you are. You light up a space, you light up a room. And so you would want to say to us that we must remain confident, committed, and consistent and true to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? I believe that that's extremely important. Now, Dee is watching us from London. So
okay.
She too is up pretty late watching our episode.
Yeah, that's 1 a.m. Yeah.
So we've got company.
Thanks for staying up.
Yeah. And so thank you so much for bringing your impact and your influence on us. And I would say to everybody else, watch the replay so that you can get nuggets again and share it with someone who may actually need it. I know I'm going to be rewatching it. I gained a lot. And yeah, nothing like really looking into ourselves and pushing ourselves to the next best version of who we are. There's so much to this life that we ought to be doing. And thanks for reminding us of that too. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Everybody tell her
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you,
Yes.
everyone.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye now. Blessings.
Bye.
Bye.